Hi, I'm Nils Mönkemeyer, and together with you, I would like to talk about Arpeggione Sonata and select a few juicy spots for you to work on and give you some inspiration how to practice and perform it better. This sonata, it was created in a time when Schubert was actually in crisis. He had a couple of years where he didn't quite know how to finish pieces. We can see that in various piano sonatas he started and then the pieces don't get finished. And the Arpeggione Sonata, it was created in just that time, and it was one of the first pieces he actually finished. And what he found in this time, or what he was searching for, was this very specific tone that we would typically associate with Schubert. And that's what is the beauty of this piece to me, that it's the birth of romanticism, the birth of the singing beauty that we find in his pieces, and also the long lines that are the separation from classical and romantic style. And that's where he suddenly started to blossom and find his own sound. And that's the magic of this piece. And at the same time, that's also the difficulty, because it sort of meanders a bit between classical moments where it's almost like a late Mozart, and then we move to these beautiful blossoming romantic long lines. And this fine line to find it, that is something very tricky, and that is something you should be always aware of, that you create a beauty that is so fragile that it can be almost destroyed in a second. And if you manage to walk this path, then you will find incredible beauty in this interpretation. The main dynamic in Schubert is pianissimo. So the music is quite introvert, and it can feel a bit intimidating on stage to do that, and I encourage you to stay faithful to that and play this piece in a way that is very fragile and almost private. And then the moments where he writes really forte, and in very rare occasions fortissimo, then you can really go for it. Generally, I prefer to have a more flexible bow hold and to use a sound that can be modified in various moments, rather than going for it like a Brahms sonata where you would have a very even sound and create this kind of dense texture. And in Schubert, I would love it if you could do a sound that is very flexible and a bow hold that can immediately change sounds and colors. Generally, there is one issue regarding the tempo in this piece. If you look at it, you have the singing passages and the more rhythmical ones, and mostly, especially in the third movement as well and in the first movement, that we want to play a bit more moving and faster instinctively in the moving passages, and to have a bit of freedom inside for the themes that are singing. And if you look at Schubert's lead repertoire, which is the core repertoire of what he did, apart from, of course, piano sonatas, but the kind of idea that one theme is entirely written in one color and one mood and describes one sentiment, that is, I think, the key to find the right tempo. So, in my opinion, it's absolutely okay to move the tempo upwards a bit and then go down. And if you use a more flexible way of playing this piece, then the coming and going of the tide, so to say, that is also creating a flexibility and beauty in it that will enhance your interpretation greatly. Now, let's talk in detail about the first theme, because that creates a few difficulties in itself, the way it's written, and I want to go through almost every note with you, if you allow me. Well, this is already the first question mark. You can see that the line that Schubert wrote, the legato line, it goes until the second A. Many people divide the bow here, although it's not written this way, because it feels more comfortable afterwards in the bow distribution, but I encourage you to do the original bow. Because this whole theme presents one thing that is very unique to this and is also the difficulty of it. It has lots of repeated notes. Let's go through it in very quick detail. A, E, 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 D, D. So if you do it badly, it will sound very repetitive. So try to find a different color for each and every note. So move from the first A, create a tiny tension for the change of harmony. Release. But don't do it too much. I remember in my first masterclass with Yuri Bashmet, he told me I played it like this. And then he made a bowing movement and said like, bye-bye. So the point he wanted to make, and that is a very valid one, that the theme should go on and on and on. It's like a very long, long melody. So release the last A, but keep the sound and go in one movement to the 3 up bow notes. Yeah, so it doesn't stop. Then we have these beautiful 2 accents. Give them a light swing in the bow. Maybe not heavy with weight, just a bit of speed, almost like an outward sigh. And then the E afterwards doesn't have an accent, so it would be very nice if we could hear that. So do it less with the diminuendo during the shift and the bow change. Then connect over the pause and continue in the same color. So we don't have an interruption during the break. Meaning, yeah, that would be a bad version. Now, I think it would be very nice if in bar 14 you could manage to have a suspension and a sigh, which is not just completely even, but goes a bit more weight on the first note. So, from the soft sound. And now find a different color for the next harmony. That could be one version, or you could do more. And already again, not. Yeah, so if you decide to give a bit more schwung on the D in bar 14, then go slow bow for the next one. Or the other way around. Many variations are possible. Find 3 because you have to play it 3 times, and good musicians always choose a different one for every time they play. One little technical thing I often hear and do myself. Prepare the 4th finger very early in this moment because it's a wolf note and it might not speak very well. So, and move the arm in one movement so it's not interrupted in sound and in movement during this whole motive. It should be in one movement. Yeah, so one movement in the elbow and wrist, higher upper arm, and a prepared 4th finger. Then we come to the most magic moment in the theme, when suddenly it is in bar 17, the piano movement stops. Until then, you heard da-dee-dee, do-doo-doo, so it always moves on. But then, in this moment, suddenly the piano stops. So we have this beautiful upward swing, and the flow, it goes and goes and goes, and suddenly we reach this plateau. And I don't know, when you were a child, maybe you were sitting on a swing and you will remember this moment when the swing goes upwards. There is this incredible moment where it's almost like a standstill, where before the pendulum, so to say, swings the other way. And this is the moment. So you have da di da di da da ba dia, ti da da di da. Yeah, so keep it upwards for just a split second and then guide your listener back to flow. Automatically, you might do a crescendo when you go back to flow. Make sure that you do a diminuendo, and think about it also that the next bar is a pianissimo. That brings me back to the very beginning. The color you should find is a piano, not a pianissimo. So also you start for the first time to play. So don't be too shy. Play the music for yourself in an intimate way, but don't play pianissimo, so that you can later add that in this particular beautiful major moment in bar 18. That means also that your diminuendo maybe should finish with a bit of a density still in sound, so that then the D can be really light with almost, I mean, accidentally, here's my viola, but my hand is just doing this, yeah? Just an upwards movement. So here with still a bit of contact, and then very light. And save your bow. Add the vibrato later and think about the maximum vibrato in bar 20. And then bar 20. What does it mean? A forte piano and then a diminuendo. It's a big question for many people because Schubert writes it quite often. Does it mean forte diminuendo to a piano? I don't think so, because I love the feeling that is different here, that before you don't and now you have a fortepiano. So the little inner jolt of the fortepiano should still be there. And then use the same way of doing the diminuendo like you did in bar 17, where you keep the contact slightly after the fortepiano, and then with the diminuendo you release to a very light bow, so that in the following bar you go back to the same sound you used when you started the piece. Meaning, yeah, don't release completely. And then hearing the diminuendo, release the bow. And here you should go back to swing and to tempo also, so that the following bars will transition naturally. The following bars are the moment when you unite with the pianist. Yeah, so for the first time you have one common motive. So it's not a melody with accompaniment, but it should be one sound. Therefore, I quite like it if the ends of the two slurred motives are lifted, so that you have a bit of resonance and a bit of air, similarly to what a pianist would do, palm. You know how the piano swings out so nicely, so we imitate that so that you create one sound together with the piano. Meaning that here, you would lift without stopping the bow. So the arm would do the same movement as if you played legato, and the fingers itself, they lift the bow slightly. So you create the nice resonant endings. At the same time, it's a motive together in two, so it's not separate. That would be very repetitive, but we want create going to the second and go back. And maybe even lighter bow. More in, find a different shade. And then, because we are in a crescendo, go long. Until here, yeah? So it's not the same repetition all the time. Then maybe the bow could be like a little banana shape, a little light, and the fingers a bit more active, and then finish the whole long line when you go from bar 26 upwards in the crescendo and really reach the top and go down, so that you don't play too loud at the beginning of the crescendo and you reach the maximum point where Schubert writes diminuendo, yeah, which is quite longer than we expect because the phrase is not regular. So the high E would be your entrance point. And then go slightly to the bridge so the harmonic sounds nice, but don't press, just pull. Now let's talk about bar 40, the second subject and a completely different character. Now it is in pianissimo, so it should be very light and almost a bit tender in my opinion, but it should also be lively. So try to really lift, and especially lift, the left hand, so that the fingers don't only do the percussion thing that we practice so much, but also the lifting, so that the left hand creates the right character, so that the bow can be very flexible and light. Usually people do it the other way around, but I think this is nicer. Yeah? So lift from the ground knuckle here, keep the arm still, and move the fingers lightly, fast and active. The bow itself, you can do a banana shape, you can do a very soft and light legato, that's up to you. Yeah, find different variations and play around with it. I think it lives from the spontaneity of it. The next bar has the specific accent on the second beat, which is a very typical moment in this piece. And so that means also that the first beat shouldn't have an accent. So you don't go, but light and... Personally, I think the arm itself doesn't really do it. It's all in the fingers because you're quicker that way. I wouldn't do it with the elbow because that takes too much time. The same motive comes in many places as well. Sometimes he writes it with the 16th pause after the second one. Then it should be really short, and later on it comes again. Now, I want to give you an example of practicing for one more element in this piece, and that is bar 179. If you play it in the high version, it's quite difficult, and I want to talk for 1 second technically about how to practice scales with 1-2-1-2 fingerings. Now that would be the way to practice bar 179. The upward scale presents the difficulty that it often doesn't sound like it's done with ease, and the whole motive itself, yeah, has like a joyous, swingful way. So practice it for the left hand and use only 1-1-1, only the notes that the first finger plays. In that case, it would be a D, F sharp, A, and C sharp. And then connect them in one movement, going outwards with the elbow, putting the thumb under, so that you have the freedom to really go up and don't get stuck using only the wrist. It should be led by the arm. And create one fluent movement in your left hand. Obviously not much pressure in the first finger. Afterwards, you add the second finger like a triolet. So, then do it a bit faster, so it's really very light and easy for you. And then it's just a small step. to do it in one with the same fluidity in the movement and almost zero pressure. So after you did that, and you add the bow, you will notice, and it's a very typical thing because our hands are connected, that you will start doing, because the bow has this spiccato, that the left hand also does the same. So practice it slowly, but with a fast bow movement. So. And the fingers still gliding in one movement. So. And then you speed that up, trusting yourself and doing it in one flow. A quick word about the coda. Obviously, you want the coda to be very reminiscent and also, in my opinion, not too slow, so it's not like a completely different tempo, but relax and let it go. Generally, anyways, you are very dependent on what the pianist does because you can completely do it alone. So this is something to talk about in a rehearsal, but generally, there is one aspect of it that will help you greatly, and that is thinking about the pauses. And if you think about the pause as an entity, as a musical moment, let's say my hand is the pause, yeah, and I'm entering the pause here, and I'm continuing here. Then there's a variety of things that could happen in this moment of silence. You can increase the energy, you can go down, you can keep it, you can change the mood completely, and that should directly translate into your preparational movements technically. So the pause is actually an active moment of imagination for what comes next and a possibility to create beautiful textures. So let's say, for example, we have the first motive. And I still play it quite in a sighing but outwards way, and I want to do the second one in a more introvert manner, for example. Then the pause is the moment to change your preparational movement and the mood. And my imagination is prepared. That means the preparation of the bow and how you breathe inside, that will create the next one better. Yeah, so it's not a moment to just wait and then play again. And that way, you can create a beautiful layer, extra layer of versatility for this coda. And then also, obviously, you will have to react to the piano. A last thing about bar 198, where you have again, that motive is like the slowed down version of, or what we talked about before, and also with a pause. So play it the same way. The pause will be the waving goodbye. If you connect it, you will not go down enough. Then a huge forte, full of pain, but not pianissimo, because that comes in the fatal last two chords. Now, the second movement is like a peaceful island and so beautiful and touching. And it's also incredibly difficult to perform on stage because it's so slow and we need to move very slowly and carefully, create an everlasting long melody. And at the same time, it feels like we can't move enough. So this is the main challenge for this movement. And if you think about the mood itself, it's actually not a standstill, but it is always moving, and the piano has always 8 notes. So generally what helps to feel the flow is to also always listen to the piano and have a feeling that within this pulsation of 8 notes, you move and move and move. And I suggest you practice this in 2 different ways. Once you play it much faster, and do it in a swingy movement and without stopping. By the way, both fingers on the string, prepared. 1 movement for the string crossing. And then you play half tempo and focus that the movements are equally flowing as if you play fast. So fast, and then you do it very slowly. So that you don't get stuck inside. Control the breathing. Breathe in and out and never stop it. And prepare the entrance in a round movement, not stopping the breath, not stopping the movement. Going very close to the string and entering the string like a plane landing. So you start in the direction where you want to go, and then you slowly come to the viola. So this should be your friend, this moment. Yeah, it's very important that we don't get stuck before we even start to play. Musically, I really like it if the vibrato and the sound stays the same for the entire first part. So we do the shades, but the mood itself, this peaceful, tranquil flow, isn't interrupted by sudden movements or by fast, sudden vibrato or by discontinued vibrato. So try to have everything in a swing, not only the bow, but also the left hand, so the vibrato never stops. Now I want to talk about the moment, the magic moment in, I think it's bar 35, when the death bell starts. You hear the repeated E in the piano, dun, 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 dun. And it's one of these moments in Schubert's music where suddenly there's like a door that opens to another world and something that is threatening the beauty. I want to just have a very quick excursion. If you think about B major piano sonata, the last big piano sonata, it's a similar thing where you have a beautiful theme that is full of peace, and then he has this very dark trill that is sort of like a shadow that goes over the landscape. And this moment in bar 35 when the piano starts, that is the same moment where suddenly there's a moment of anguish. And that's why for this whole part I would change the sound and create something more anxious and more nervous inside. So this is the moment to change the vibrato to a bit quicker and maybe the bow to a bit deeper and with a bit more weight, so that you create the sense of urgency. The accents like an inner shock almost, something that frightens you, but don't go all out, do it inside, yeah? And then he interchanges between going back to beauty in bar 39. Yeah, it's still okay, but then it comes again. And the second one is with the big crescendos until bar 45. So, and this would be the moment. Watch your body, that you don't end up this way. Viola down, shoulders up, but no. viola up, shoulders down, and go in the string because this is a long note. And create a beautiful bridge in the diminuendo back to the peaceful color. Now we are entering the last part of the piece, which is of this movement, which is very, very difficult because, it's almost not moving anymore, and it's reduced to only colors. So first of all, go to the piano, if you have one, and play the harmonies and just listen to them, how beautiful they are. And when you play, never focus too much on yourself, always focus on the sound of the piano. And then I suggest you do an exercise called sans filet, a spinned tone is a rough translation. It comes from French school, and it started already in Baroque times that people were doing it. And there's a very famous letter from the violinist Giuseppe Tartini to his student, who was in a lockdown kind of situation and asked her maestro for exercises, and he said, practice one bow 1 minute. It is very difficult, and I suggest you put the metronome on 60, you take a random note or one of the notes you find in this movement in the last part, and you practice 10 seconds, 11, 12, and you increase as far as you can go, and then you go back. And then you do the other way around. You start from 10 and you go to 1 and you go back. So that you practice to know every centimeter how you touch the string, how you feel with the fingers, where the weight shifts going to the tip, and how in the back especially you are always moving the shoulder blade when you start at the frog. So for example, this stop, this moment, don't go high, stop the breathing, what we usually do if we are afraid, but go down, relax, let the shoulder blades hang in your back and move your upper arm, never stop. And here, shift the weight in the fingers. So you start by having the weight on the little finger, not on the index finger. You shift the weight to this finger so that here the bow lies calmly on the string. And do that every day for at least 5 minutes, and you will see a tremendous improvement, and it helps for anything, not only Schubert. The next difficulty in this movement is that we also want to vibrate. So for example, let's say we take this note, that would be bar 51, and you do it first without vibrato, so, and then you add the vibrato, and if you do it too much, either you will instinctively do the same movement with your other hand, because we are designed to move both hands the same way, or you will shake the viola too much with the vibrato, and then the bow does this. So it's very important that you focus on a horizontal movement in the arm, the right arm, and in the left hand. Relax the thumb, vibrate with the thumb as well. So you can practice it this way, that you do this, no fingers on the string, just the thumb, and you do an open string. Now I'm talking, but it should be uninterrupted. And the skin of your thumb is touching the viola so lightly that you can basically feel it moving from side to side. If you keep the thumb in a fixed position and you vibrate, that will create this shake and also make it very difficult to control the speed of the vibrato. So if you relax your thumb at the part where you touch the viola, then it will help tremendously. Also, soft back of the hand, almost a bit round out. So then you do the same exercise, the sans filet, you do it with vibrato, and then you do it in the piece and you play the same part that we were talking about. You play everything starting from bar 49 in half tempo. And if you can do that, you will feel very much at ease on stage. Now the third movement, incredibly charming and beautiful in the theme, is maybe, out of the three movements, the one that's musically the most straightforward, because you have very clear character that stays for a long time, and if you solve one, you solved all, so to say. Let's have a closer look at the main theme. You know, I always wondered, what is the difference between Allegro and Allegretto? And if you think about it, that what does it mean, Allegretto, you know? So, of course, it means it's not quite as fast as Allegro, but I also think that it means that it's music that doesn't have a lot of impetus to go somewhere. It's music that is happy where it is and sort of in the state of being, you are well. And after this incredibly haunting second ending of the second movement, this movement tells you it will be okay, at least until the next subject. And the way to play it for me is really play it like a lullaby. So use a swing in the arm, very relaxed shoulder, free upper arm without too much weight, and soft fingers where the thumb can always move. Watch your body, that the whole body can swing ever so slightly and doesn't hold in a way that would inhibit the bow, yeah? Now we add the accents. I would suggest to do them with a bit of faster bow in the beginning of the notes, so that they have a bit of this happy movement to start the note with. While you practice this to find your sound and to find the general feel for this movement, already watch it that when you vibrate, that the vibrato doesn't stop during the bow changes or the accents. So the bad example would be, and then no vibrato. Rather than that, start to vibrate, and then add the bow, and have the free feeling in the left hand too, where nothing is interrupted. Now the theme itself consists of a few elements that I think are very beautiful if you don't play them too similar. So already we have the first 4 bars lilting away, and then we have in bar 5 and 6 we already have a line over the 2 bars. So that already is a different feel, from 1 bar swing to a longer swing, still with accents underneath, and then we have a 2 bar slur without accents. And generally I think that all the notes that don't have an accent, especially like the beginnings of the bars, they should have a different bow speed. That's why I like that the accents have a swing with faster speed, and then you do them slower. So that would be just like we practiced. Yeah, so give 2 lilts under the bow without stopping it, and then slow bow and maybe a slightly different shade and sound, and then go back to the swing. Then in bar 13 and 14 you have a crescendo, and afterwards you have a pianissimo. That's like a subito pianissimo, and that's different than when it comes the second time, where you have a crescendo and then shortly before the pianissimo a diminuendo. which I quite like because we already know, so it doesn't have to be a surprise. And just find a different solution for that. And when you have the subito, take slightly more hair and then less hair for the pianissimo, so the sounds are a bit different. Then bar 17 marks the third element, and that's at the beginning of a hairpin, crescendo and decrescendo over 4 bars that open and close. So these would be the bars that start with the least bow, so they are even different. And then again. So the crescendo, the hairpins are done, and the diminuendo with more speed in the bow without adding much weight, just a little bit of this movement freedom, light hands, and go back. And then you go back to the swingy beginnings of having the schwung in the beginning, yeah, the swing. So if you really separate these elements very nicely, then the theme will have beautiful little shades within the same color. Generally, think about it. It comes 3 times. What is your take on this? You need to find different versions. And if you think about it from the transition of the second movement towards the third, then often in the concert it happens that, to me, that I'm still so much in this haunted mood of the second movement that I don't quite feel I can start the third movement as if nothing had happened. So I think it's quite nice if the movement is sort of coming along and we are almost not daring or like not in it yet. So it's just like a scent that comes at us saying, hey, it will be okay, and we're following that ray of sunshine, you know? So just follow the mood and don't go, okay, and now it's the third movement. Because that you can actually do when it comes the second time, when we already know it, and we come from the tormentous middle part in between the 2 times of the theme. One last note for that, if you watch the first 4 bars, it's very easy to slip into the habit of doing them all the same, because Nils said it has to be a fast bow, and then you go the same. The trick is that you, like a pearl, like you have a line made with pearls, the beginnings should form a longer line, depending where you want to go. For example, yeah, going to the third bar. There are many variations possible. Know what you want to do and do them with the first beginnings. Okay, that much for the theme. Now let's talk about bar 77 with the upbeat in 76. Now this motive I have done in various ways and also heard it many ways. The original is written with a slur in the first 2 notes, and then separate, zero, separate. Also possible to do them completely separate, because it's quite fast and difficult, and just play the first ones a bit more in the string so they sound like a legato. Or you can do what cellists often do, but their direction is different, with 2 up bows for the separate notes. Now the way to practice this is, and that is a fantastic exercise, to go to the frog, and we are using only the fingers. As my first piano teacher used to do with me, I had to move my fingers, and she put the rubber gum on the back of my hand, and I was not allowed to lose it. So that's the same idea. You basically do the stroke with your fingers, and you don't move the arm or the wrist. That just did. Doesn't sound very beautiful, but it's very helpful for later. Now let's add the string crossings. Now, the trick is that the direction down to the C string has to be done by simply relaxing the little finger, which will make the bow fall down. So here, relax. You need to give a little push on the little finger. Push to go to this direction. Relax, relax. So it's relax, relax, push, relax. Yeah, so this has to be very clear, and the thumb itself has very little pressure and works basically like a balance point for the rest of the fingers. Then you want ugly articulation. To have really clear contact. When you play faster, it will sound much better. Yeah? So don't try to sound beautiful. It's more a purpose to play well later when you play fast. Now the other exercise, now we watch the fingers, is to practice the arm movement. For that, you touch your bow in the gravitation point, so around like in the first third of the bow, and you will do the whole stroke behind your hand, where you usually now wouldn't play. The arm position is as if you lift your arm and you look under it, so it's sort of in front of your face, normal bow hold, and now the screw of the bow and the elbow move in one entity, and you practice with a relaxed shoulder the different layers of your bow. That takes a bit of getting used to, but it's very helpful to know what you have to be doing. So try faster in the end as well. Now combined, that means the fingers are doing the movement and the arm itself, and then... And the good news is, if you practice that, it will help for any other place where you need something like that. And if you're in the mood, pick up prelude the prelude of the E major partita, and play it on the viola, because the bariolage effect is exactly the same. One last note about that. When you play, the main note is in the middle string, and often it happens that the higher strings sound louder. So avoid that. You can do that by putting the arm on the G string, in this case, so in the middle string, and give an arm impulse always for the first note. So, yeah, so also it's very good for your brain to have a clear structure. This is my starting point of the impulse. So one impulse per 4 notes. Then you practice the whole thing slowly, what I told you, and then you do the old-fashioned rhythm variations. Quartet, Lombardic, and so on, and then you can do 4 slow, 4 fast. And already you can notice, look how scratchy it is in slow tempo. If I do the same feeling faster, it's already very clear. So avoid playing beautiful in slow tempo. Do it scratchy. All right, this concludes my exercises for the 3rd movement of the Arpeggione Sonata. I thank you very much for joining me in this tutorial for Handler Masterclasses. Thank you.